That's what the intel said. Codename Rainfall. Where are you taking us?
Oh, sorry, I'm going to the restroom. You all just follow me. No,
We are talking Occupation Rainfall, which is the sequel to 2018's Occupation. This one is directed and co-written by Luke Spark, and once again stars Dan Ewing and Temuera Morrison. So this was an Australian movie. The first movie had a pretty good production value and was quite kind of high octane in regards to explosions and stuff like that, and essentially was a kind of a science fiction version of Red Dawn. The main issue I had with that one, it was just so cheesy. Cheesy dialogue, cheesy acting, you know, cheesy kind of moments within the movie, and this movie is kind of the same sort of thing. However, let me tell you about the story, then we're going to go into some positives and negatives. So this takes place 2 years after the original film, and at this point we have an alien force that has evaded, you know, Earth and ultimately controls the majority of things, save a few pockets of human resistance. And we have this kind of like, this kind of push to find out what this mysterious chatter about this Rainfall, Operation Rainfall is, which seems to be some type of important kind of military significance in regards to the kind of the alien offensive. And we have a kind of a small group of protagonists trying to kind of find out what's happening, whilst the bulk of the forces are at this kind of base, and there's kind of internal strife there where we have our kind of die-hard commander who has no time for any type of aliens who may well have joined the kind of the human side, like defectors and things like this, versus kind of someone who really kind of wants to have a bit more of a cooperative and diplomatic solution to it all. So what will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So let's talk about, first of all, what I think works in Operation Rainfall. It actually is kind of similar, and my positives and negatives are going to be somewhat similar to the first movie. However, though, I will say there's a couple of things here that I think this movie maybe did a little better. One of the issues I had with the first movie is there was very little characterization on our kind of protagonist. We really didn't know who was who. Everyone kind of blended into one. And I will say, at least with some of the characters here, I do feel we get a little bit more kind of character work done. In particular, I would say the relationship between our main kind of good guy alien and kind of the main kind of human protagonist, who was obviously carried over from the first movie. I did think they got a little bit better character moments here, and there's actually even a little bit of humour within the movie as well. Speaking of humour, Ken Jeong kind of shows up towards the end of the movie, and he's kind of doing his Ken Jeong thing. I actually quite like Ken Jeong as a kind of a comedian, and although he's kind of somewhat more restrained here, there are still a couple of kind of funny moments here. The best thing I can say about this movie is it's, you know, relatively high production value for what is not a blockbuster movie. There is plenty of special effects here, and I've got to say, although it's not up to blockbuster level, for a kind of a medium budget movie, I suppose, it's still pretty impressive, you know, with a kind of a good variety of different kind of ground assaults. We have giant monsters, we have spaceships, various kind of different armour. And again, one of the critiques I had with the first movie is kind of the aliens themselves looked a little cheesy. And here we have actually a bigger variety of kind of alien kind of makeup, showing that there's kind of different types of these kind of grey type aliens that look, you know, aesthetically kind of different and stuff like that, which I thought was quite good. We even get some kind of alien creatures. Like I said, there's a huge kind of monster fight about midway through the movie. We get their alien equivalent of horses and even kind of little bugs and things. So there's a little bit more kind of going on, and we have kind of different types of, we have that special forces, kind of alien bad guys, and we do see one of the kind of the alien higher ups as well. So there's some decent kind of production value, albeit it's not kind of blockbuster level, and there's plenty of action. So if you're the sort of person that kind of skips the dialogue scenes when you watch a film and just kind of wants to watch the action sequences, then this is a movie for you, because it's pretty much action sequence followed by a little bit of dialogue, then another action sequence. Which brings me on to what doesn't work. It's the kind of the same thing, really. The dialogue here is awful. It really is awful. It's kind of what a 9-year-old would think macho dialogue would sound like. And the movie actually has credits for 3 writers, and some of the writers are credited to additional dialogue, which I'm assuming is to kind of punch up the script. They were the same, one of them was the same writers from the first movie, and I'm thinking, you need to change it up. The dialogue here is terrible. It's so incredibly trite. It's just not realistic. It's typical kind of cheesy, crappy dialogue that you get in the kind of like 90s TV shows. I actually compared the first movie to a TV show called Falling Skies, and it is true, it still does remind me of that kind of TV, network TV specifically kind of feel, although this does have a few more swear words in it, admittedly. But the dialogue is absolutely terrible. Although I think there is a little bit more kind of character development in this one compared to the first one, we still get some really kind of like on-the-nose stereotypes in regards to caricatures and character moments and things like that, where people have like OTT kind of motivations, and the movie has some really clumsy metaphors for racism and things like this within the kind of the movie as well. This movie is filled with just some silly things that to me just didn't make sense. So we're meant to believe this particular story is 2 years into an alien occupation, but the humans seem to have access to still loads of munitions. They seem to have loads of kind of fighter jets that are all kind of fueled up and things like this. I'm thinking, where is all this kind of resources come from? It's like never addressed. I mean, if there was such many kind of humans killed, and you know we lost the war so badly, we simply wouldn't have these kind of resources left. Or they'll be very few and far between. Certainly, this kind of like what you see on screen here would be more like the first kind of like few months of a conflict. It wouldn't be 2 years after it, considering the beating that we're meant to believe that kind of humanity took. And the other thing I think, in regards to the length of this movie, this is a longer movie than the first one, although not by a huge amount, but it kind of really feels longer, because at least the first movie, you know, you had the kind of the characterization at the beginning, the kind of, and we see the kind of the invasion kind of take place, whilst this one starts and kind of stops at the kind of the same place, where it's just kind of like fighting. And, you know, we don't really have any type of kind of real story arc, really. It's just kind of like the beginning of the movie is kind of similar to the end of the movie, and everything in between is kind of the same. Whilst the first movie, although it is still probably a little long, at least then you had kind of like a more of a story arc to follow, where we see people on the start of this journey, so it kind of feels a little bit more like a journey, and you don't feel the length as much. And this one is just too long and not kind of narratively as interesting as the kind of the first movie. And let me tell you, when you've got kind of like cheesy kind of characters and dialogue, it doesn't really enthrall you. You're not kind of really invested in kind of what you're seeing on screen. And when the movie is, you know, nearly 2.25 hours long, it becomes a little bit of a chore. And therefore, you know, this movie could have been cut down, ideally by 30, if not 40 minutes, to make it a far more punchy film. Honestly, I mean, you could cut out some of these action sequences. You actually don't need as many action sequences, because you still have plenty. And, you know, it kind of would have made the film for a lot more of a digestible kind of experience. But to be honest, the money that they maybe would have spent on having less action sequences could have gone into some better dialogue with kind of less cheesy, stereotypical kind of characters spouting out wooden dialogue. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the acting here is somewhat kind of wooden as well. So should you watch this movie? I would say if you do like a loud, brash, explosion-filled science fiction movie, there is some enjoyment to be had. I maybe think it would have been suited for a younger audience, but it does have quite a few swear words and things in as well. But it kind of feels like it's going for certainly a younger audience. There was a Russian science fiction movie that I got to watch recently, well, about a year ago now, that was similar, but it was done so much better, and I think this movie could have take some lessons from that. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10, which is actually a lower score than my original movie, although I do think there are some things that this movie improves upon, but there are some more glaring issues as well. So it's a 5 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment. And oh God, it sets up another movie, a third one at the end of it as well. Have you seen it? Will you see it? Leave me a comment. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.